Hi, and welcome to the Science of the Good Life. It's Louisa Jewell here, and I am just thrilled to have David Pollay here with me today. David Pollay is a very, very good friend of mine, a dear friend. And I mean, you will read his books and you will see how wonderful he is. And he's even more wonderful in person. So I feel very, very honored to be having him on the show today. His first book, Law of the Garbage Truck, completely changed my life. It was so powerful. And now he's releasing his second book called The Three Promises. And I promise you that if you get the book and read the book, that it will transform your life. It's an incredible book. I've read it. It's already transforming my life. He did it again. And so I really wanted to have him today on the show so that he can share with you some of his wonderful, wonderful ideas about his new book. So David, welcome for being here. And I'm so happy and thrilled that you're here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Louisa, for having me. I appreciate it. And I probably am blushing with everything you said, and I appreciate it. And you are a very good friend, so I'm grateful to be on the show with you.
Well, I'm very grateful to have you as a friend, David. So let's share. First of all, David, when you first told me that the book was called The Three Promises, what do you mean by three promises? Tell us about the title.
Well, the three promises, I think there are two thoughts there. One is, what are the three promises particularly, and then what's the essence of a promise in terms of the book. And essentially what we're saying, or I'm saying in the book about these three promises, is that I want you to make three promises where you declare with the intention to achieve a certain thing every day and plan on fulfilling it every day, something important. And what the book is about, and what I take the reader through from beginning to end, is really the case for these three promises in particular. That there are three promises that, based on all the research I've done over the years, working with people from more than 100 countries, our work, Louisa, in positive psychology, that there are three promises in particular that lead to fulfillment. And that's really what we're after. And those three promises are: find joy every day, do what you love, and make a difference.
Nice. I love it. So let's start with the first promise, David. Let's start with find joy every day, which is great. I've already started into this as well. And tell us about what should we be doing to find joy every day?
Well, see, this is the beauty of the three promises, and is that it's a filter for us to look at life. And so when we take the first promise of find joy, the idea is for us to think about anything that brings us joy in a way that we consider authentic, something that makes us, creates in positive psychology terms, positive emotion. Anything that brings out joy, brings out gratitude, brings out curiosity, creativity, anything that really triggers that positive emotion is very important. And what happens oftentimes is people get caught up in that there's only one way to really experience joy. Well, I should really be great at meditating, or I should really be great at yoga, or I should be really tremendous at exercising. And the idea is that we all have different things that inspire us and make us feel good on a daily basis, and that we should choose the ones that actually have the impact we're looking for. And the joy can be very simple, where sometimes folks say, I don't have time for joy. I need an hour and a half, or when the right time. And the idea is, for the first promise, is just to find 10 minutes of joy. I'll give you a quick example, Louisa. Yesterday I was interviewed on sports radio, and I was talking to two tough guys about sports. And, I played football, and it was great to talk to them. But when we got to the serious question of what joy do you find, one of the hosts said, in reality, I realize I just love getting out in the morning, picking up a lawn chair, putting it in my backyard, and letting my dogs run wild for 10 minutes. And he said, and until you told me about the book and I learned about the find joy as a goal, I really didn't take credit for that 5 minutes or 10 minutes with the dogs. Whereas now I go out there going, here's my joy time. I'm going to go out and I'm going to run with the dog. I'm going to sit and watch the dogs run. So there's a version of that for all of us, where there's something that we want to do that gives us joy reliably, authentically, no matter the circumstances of our lives, because we all know life can be challenging. So we all want to find some respite And the first promise helps give us that respite.
Yes, and I like that, you're making a promise to yourself to make that happen in the day, and so I think that's even a little different because you're consciously bringing it into your day.
That's right. That's exactly right. That, I mean, that is the key, is to really say before because we have long lists, of what we have to do in the day, or agendas and complex calendar systems. And the idea is just plan at least one thing. More the better is great, but definitely one thing that you can look forward to when your day begins. And at the end of the day, you can reflect and put a big check mark and say, I had joy. No one can take that away from me. I had joy amidst all the other craziness in my life. I had joy.
Beautiful. David, you talked about difficult circumstances sometimes. Now, my favorite story, and just so our listeners know, in terms of the three promises, every chapter, every different section in the book on each of the three promises, you've got lots of stories and ideas, and you back that up with all the research in positive psychology and to really help us understand how this brings us greater happiness and joy and well-being and fulfillment. And one of the stories that I really love in Finding Joy Every Day is Baby in 23C. Please, can you share this story? Because, it wasn't a very likely story on how to find joy. So I
Well,
hope.
sure, absolutely. No, I'm glad to share it. And I start smiling because I remember the story so well. That's really to your very nice comment about stories in the book. Research is important. We've got that covered. Strategies are important. We have 65 of them in the book. But really, we all learn through story. I mean, we're going to talk at the end of the day when we talk to the people in our lives. We're going to tell a story about what happened to the day. We're not going to pull out a PowerPoint. We're not going to. This is not going to happen. If
Yeah,
we do, no
hopefully
one's going to
not. Yeah,
listen. Right.
that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Watch us now if someone's going to present a PowerPoint to us. But anyway, it's really the idea is that stories are how we learn and how we learn from each other. So that particular story was that we've all been on airplanes and we all know what it's like to have in mind a nap or a desire to work and be productive. And there happened to be one particular plane ride, and I'll make the longer version of the stories in the book, but the short version is really, I sat down in my chair and I was all fired up that I was going to have like 2.5 hours on the way to Chicago to get my work done for work on my PowerPoint for a program with a corporate client. And but all of a sudden, as I was sitting there, I heard this wailing and this big cry, and I'm going, whoa, what is that? That's a loud cry. And then it started getting louder and louder, and it was coming closer and closer to me. And then all of a sudden, as it got really close to me, then I realized, wait a second, this baby, it's a baby, it's being carried by a young mom. That baby may in fact be headed my way. And in fact, it was in the chair right behind me, and not two chairs, but it was mom with baby in lap. And what happened quickly was, one, the baby just wouldn't settle down, could not stop crying. And then the mother was as sweet as she could be, but couldn't stop the baby from kicking my seat. So I was getting that boom, boom, boom on the back of the seat and the yelling and so forth. So what happens, so, I'm just like anybody else. I study positive psychology, but I was triggered. And I was triggered to think, like, why me? Why do you have to sit right here? How am I ever going to get any work done? This is just, can't the mother do something about the child? Isn't there a way to settle the child? Maybe the flight attendant has a solution. And I just was getting worked up. And nothing was getting better as I was getting worked up. And then all of a sudden I realized, and this is how often insights come, just situations happen in our lives. I realized, I said, wait a second, there's another path here. And what I realized is, because I started laughing, and I started laughing because I started thinking about my daughters, who I had traveled with across country many times, and how they kicked seats, yelled out loud, spit up, all that stuff. And when I started thinking about them, all of a sudden I had a switch of the mind where I started to think warmly about my own children and thought how sweet my girls are and how grateful I was that parents and other travelers were patient with my kids. So I turned that around to think of every time the child behind me kicked me. Now, of course, that still was not my preference, but every time who would it be?
No.
Why would it be, right?
Right.
But ultimately, what I did was I let that be a trigger for me to follow a new path where it triggered gratitude for my children, gratitude that I, as a father, had two wonderful girls, a wonderful wife, and fellow travelers who were kind and patient with us as we were doing our best to figure out what was wrong with their child at that time in terms of did they need to feed or were their ears bothering them or whatever. So once I switched into that mode of appreciating my own children and then understanding the plight really of the mother behind me, I started to relax and relax inside. My external circumstances weren't relaxing. The crying continued, but I was finding myself more peaceful inside. And as a result, then I was able to enjoy the flight as best as I could. I was able to get work done. And at the end of the flight, I turned around to the mom and looked at her, and she was sheepish. She was so embarrassed about her child. And I said, your child was just fine, in fact. And I pulled out my wallet, just thinking about this because I could see her face. I pulled out my wallet and showed pictures of my children. I said, they're now, at the time I think they were 7 or 8 or so, and I said, but my children were the same age of your child too, and they did exactly the same thing. So you're blessed to have the child you have, and I'm grateful I have mine, and have a great trip. And she felt good, and I left actually feeling not only that I was able to make the flight more productive, I felt like I was able to do something warm and positive for somebody else. And that's where there's a choice. I call it like that gratitude path, where you get to go one way or the other. You can either go one negative and complaining and criticism and frustration and stay there and get deeper into it and bring other people with you, or you can choose another path and let it trigger something grateful in your life.
Yeah,
so that was
true.
really that story. Yeah.
I love that story. And I love
Oh,
how
thank you.
you circled back to the mother because you know that she was feeling terrible
Yeah.
and you really turned it around for her with your compassion,
Oh,
for her situation. And I thought that was so beautiful. And, again, you were able to do your work because you just didn't, you had this different strategy. So, it's really a
thank
great
you.
example of finding joy no matter what. And
Right.
and so
Right.
that's I mean there were so many beautiful stories in that section on finding joy, and you have so many ideas on how to do that, and that one just really stuck out with me. Now, so
Thank you.
let's move to the second promise: do what you love. And one of the things, so maybe describe that a little bit, and then there's one thing I really want to talk to you about. So go ahead, describe this one a little bit.
Sure. Well, do what you love ultimately is, as it sounds at the high level, is that you want to be doing something in your life that you love doing. Now, I particularly focus on doing something that you love doing inside your career and or inside your hobbies, inside your interests expressed outside of work. And that the idea with do what you love is that, like find joy every day, do what you love is finding at least 5, 10, 15 minutes of authentically creative time where you feel as though you're engaging your natural strengths, you're tapping your passion, you're doing something that interests you, you're doing what you do best, so that you can say, no matter, yeah, I was processing invoices all day, but I had an opportunity to work on my presentation, which I love doing, or I was able to do a little research, which I love doing. Whatever it is that you find that helps you express what you love to do, is to be able to do that for that period of time. Now, the idea is, and Louisa, you and I know there's so much research, and all the folks that are listening, I'm sure, are familiar with the research around job crafting, and Amy Resnesky at Yale University, that the people who are able to craft their jobs to include more of what they find meaningful and important and rewarding, they're more successful in their job, they do a better job for their company, and ultimately they're happier. So that the idea of do what you love is to find at least 10, 15 minutes in your day that you can say, darn it, I am doing something, excuse me, that I really love to do. And the idea it can be expressed inside your job, or it can be something where you do it after work, where you are a painter, or you are a writer, or you are a sports enthusiast, and it's something that expresses your natural gifts and talents, so that you feel as though, again, you were able to express yourself fully. And that's really the do what you love essence of the do what you love component of the three promises.
Well, and I like that because even if you're in a job that you don't like very much, you're already starting to move people towards how they could do more of what they love. And I
Right.
really like this idea of the fill year. I just thought that was brilliant. So can you please share with us what is a fill year and how can people, start into that?
Well, the fill year is essentially, it answers the question where folks will say, I'm really only going to be happy, Louisa, until I get this perfect job, or until I get the promotion, or I'm only going to be happy when I figure out what I love to do. It's just not possible for me to be joyful or feel like I'm doing what I love if I don't even know what that is. How do I get there? So the fill year is really a framework again. I did some math. I think it came up with that there are 18 work weeks in the year. If you I'll leave it for you to see the math in the book, but basically saying that there's time that you can schedule in a couple lunches a week, a little time at night, some weekend time, a night time, but basically came up with something that you could look at and say, I could really do that. That is doable. And it comes up with 18 40-hour work weeks that you have available during your year to fill with something. And what I'm asking you to fill it with are things that could be related to doing what you love. So the idea is with that time, you think, okay, what do I like to do? Or what do I love doing? So explore them all. So if you think you want to write, well, then start writing. Spend some time writing, or take a writing workshop, or go see a writer present, or spend time in a cafeteria, or a cafeteria of a cafe rather, of a bookstore. Do something related to your interests and explore them. Whatever it is that you find interesting, explore it. And then people will say, well, I work too hard, I work too long. Well, I say, well, then explore it at work. What activity could you, what team event or what team project could you volunteer for that would allow you to do more of what you're interested in? What committee could you potentially be a part of in the company? Or what activity could you volunteer for? Or what could you create inside a company? Quick example, I have a passion for the environment. And one of the things I did when I was at MasterCard is that I wanted us to recycle cans. But that wasn't part of my job. But I was able to discern that my leaders in the company did care about recycling, and they also cared about another issue that was homelessness. And what I was able to do was make a case that we could support homelessness, support people getting out of homelessness, and recycling at the same time. There was a program called We Can, and it basically allowed companies like ours, the MasterCard back then, to collect cans and then donate them to this particular center that then supported the local homeless population and helping them get back on their feet. Well, it wasn't part of my job, but I was able to craft it in such a way that I had support from the leaders. It didn't compete with any of my other priorities. I still overachieved in results that I was accountable for on the quote unquote business side. But then I was able to recruit other people inside the company to participate. It ended up being a great expression for me and a lot of other people, because we had to have a captain on every floor in one of these office towers. And so every day for some, may have been 15 minutes, it was looking at the containers and making sure that they weren't full and getting them ready for pickup once a week. And so it was an opportunity for me to explore something I was passionate about. Also gave me more opportunity for leadership responsibility inside the company. It gave me exposure inside the company with some of the top leaders in the company. So that's just one example of the opportunities that exist inside companies. If we use our creativity, we can actually find a way to get them accomplished inside our jobs at work.
Love that story. That is so great. And again, you don't have to leave your job to do it, you
Right.
know?
That's the key right there. People
Yeah,
just oftentimes say, I gotta get a new job.
yeah.
And oftentimes just crafting it a little differently and starting one bite at a time, all of a sudden you find yourself in a job a year later going, wow, it's hard to imagine I was able to transform this as I did.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
it's pretty cool.
That's great. That's great. All right. Okay, let's move on to the third promise, David. So, the third promise is make a difference. So, tell us about this one.
This one really is about The first two can be focused on other people, but the essence of it is focused on finding joy for yourself, doing what you love as it relates to you. The third promise is really about making a commitment every day to find something that you can do for somebody else in their interests. It could very well benefit you too, but it's really about where you can make yourself of service to someone else. Now, the research in this area, just like in the other two, is so powerful. Research by Stephen Post on volunteering and giving is just incredible in terms of people who volunteer report that more than 90% of them report that they're happy as being volunteers. Look at the work that we both know, Louisa, about from Adam Grant and giving at work. These folks who are givers at work are more successful on the job, and they ultimately their work ultimately leads to better bottom line results. So the idea then is, how can every day you craft in your day a intentional commitment to make a difference in someone else's life? And what I really guide people to in the book is to see that it's really possible. It's not overwhelming. You don't have to go to a mountaintop and volunteer for a year or go out of the country for a year to do it. I mean, it's good if you can afford that and want to do that. Maybe that's where you end up going. But the idea is you can just make a difference in a short period of time wherever you are. And I really guide people to do that at home. Do it at the start of your day. Make a difference at home with whomever you live with, whether you're married or your partner or your roommates or even if you live alone, then who can you call, who can you text, and make a difference in that way. And then at work, framing opportunities to contribute to other people as an opportunity to make a difference. So there's so many opportunities at work that we just go, someone asked me to do that. I don't really want to do it. It's kind of a hassle. What a pain. That guy asked me again. Whereas if you frame it with, but this is an opportunity to make a difference.
Right.
This person is going to actually benefit from my doing it.
Right.
And they'll appreciate it rather than reluctantly dragging their feet. Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So it's really the idea that there's, you can craft something pretty easily and pretty quickly. And then the beauty of it is, once you open your mind to the filter of making a difference, lots of opportunities present themselves during the day, and you almost, I wouldn't say almost, you feel grateful that people present those opportunities to you to make a difference. You really know that you've got yourself on firm ground in the world when you're making a difference to other people.
Well, that's great because, and again, it's just those little things, isn't it, that you can do.
Yeah.
I now, when I go for my lunch or wherever, if I'm buying gum or whatever it is I'm doing, I always turn to the person and I just ask, how are you
Right.
doing today? Just because everyone else is just mindlessly, walking in and out. And I just stop and look them in the eye and just say, how's your day going? How are you today? And they
Wow.
always kind of shift and look up like, oh, somebody actually cares
Right.
about, and it's just a little tiny thing, but it really changes every interaction. You can see they smile a little bit. They're a little happier about, that somebody kind of paid attention, and
Well,
it's,
I have to say, there's such a gift in doing that, Louisa, because again, emotional contagion. That person's going to take that experience, as small as it might seem when we just described it. It has an impact on the next person they interact with. It impacts what they think about and what creative space they get into now that they're feeling a little bit better about their day. I mean, that's a beautiful thing, Louisa. A perfect example of one thing you can do. Just say hi to people in circumstances that are available to you.
that's right. Now, the last one, really, I can see, make a difference really adds such meaning and purpose, in our life. And sometimes when we think make a difference, like you say, you're thinking, oh, maybe I have to be like Mother Teresa or, something
Right.
big, something big.
Right.
But there was a story in that section on the butterfly. On
Mm.
your experience when you were at a butterfly sanctuary, and oh, it was just so beautiful. Will you please share it with us, David?
Oh, sure. Another story I remember so well. I mean, I've got chills thinking about it. The story really was this: that my wife and I, with our two little daughters, had moved from California to Florida for the first time, and we went down to Key West. Beautiful island and a lot of attractions, and we were deciding what we wanted to do, my wife and I, because our daughters were, sort of too young to determine what the agenda would be. But as they heard us talking, for some reason, they all of a sudden volunteered what they wanted to do. And they said, the longer stories in the book, but the short version here is that they said they wanted to go to a museum of butterflies. And my wife and I were looking at a museum of butterflies. Never heard of such a thing. Now I of course have, but I hadn't at the time. And we looked at the map, and sure enough, there was this museum of butterflies. So we decided, well, let's go ahead and do that. And we walked to the end of Duval Street in Key West, and near Hemingway's house and all that. And when we get to this museum, this little butterfly museum, I pay. I go, grab the girls and Dawn to the door that you open, to get in, and it's actually a pressurized door, where one of those where your hair goes blown back because the wind is blowing so hard, because they're trying to keep something in. And I saw what it was that thousands and thousands of butterflies, multicolored, flying around in, as you described it aptly, a sanctuary where they were free to live their lives. And I'm a pretty curious guy, and in positive psychology, of course, we study strengths, and one of my top strengths is curiosity. So I like to ask questions. And so I asked the museum tour guide as we were walking through, just out of curiosity, because I see my girls were having such a great time with the butterflies, putting their hand this way and that way, and the butterflies were landing and the whole thing. And I asked the tour guide, how long do butterflies live? I was just curious, how long do butterflies live? And then she stopped and she said, about 10 days. I went to myself, and I don't know, I probably did it with my face too, but inside I said, 10 days? I mean, what do butterflies do in 10? I mean, what can you do in 10 days? What do butterflies do in 10 days? So, like a good tourist, I just blurted it out and said, what do butterflies do in 10 days? And then she stopped, looked at me, and said, they make the world a more beautiful place. And I just stopped and thought, wow, I didn't expect to hear that in a museum of butterflies. But when I thought about it, we don't really know how long we're going to be on this planet. And that's not a motivational message. And Lisa, you and I have talked about this. It's not a motivation, it's a reality message. Life is not guaranteed beyond what we're experiencing now. And I say it again, this is not an inspirational message, what I'm saying at this moment. It's a reality message. We don't necessarily get the chance to get past 10 days, a day. So then what is it that we can do to make a difference today? And it can be in the smallest way, but anything that we do is a good thing. And where we authentically know we made a contribution, right, and not comparing ourselves. And one of the beauties of the three promises is that it's about what you find joyful, what you find helps you do what you love, and what you find that you can make a difference, so that you're not into social comparison. Well, I should be doing that. I should be doing this. No. This is what you've decided you can do today. And so, that's the butterfly, what they do in 10 days.
And so simple and so powerful. Oh, I love that. And, really, I have to tell everyone that's listening that those are just a few of the stories. I mean, we've just, was that, 2, 3, or 4 stories that we've heard. There's literally hundreds. I mean, I'm probably over exaggerating, but there's like every chapter has, tons of stories, and the stories are so powerful, David. You really know how to craft a story. And you remember them, like I remember these things. And then because your stories are so beautiful, I can recall them easier, right? And then you remember the concept around it, and then it reminds you of your 3 promises every day. So I really encourage everybody to go and get this book, because it will really change your life. And in the book as well, there is a section on how you can now put this into practice. And you've got in the book ideas on the 3 promises, the 3-day challenge.
Right.
And so tell us about that, David, because I'm going to encourage people to go and buy the book and then do the 3-day challenge and let us know their feedback on, how this changed them. So tell us about the 3-day challenge.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. The 3-day challenge, at the end of the day, my mission is not to convince people to do anything that they don't want to do. I want people to authentically say, I can live a fulfilling life, and I can do it not tomorrow, I can do it today. And the only way to do that is to experience it for yourself. And so the 3-day challenge is really simple. But what I do is I give you resources and ideas for how to make it even simpler. But the basic idea is that you, for 3 days, say, I'm going to make and fulfill the 3 promises. I will, and you essentially take a pledge. I will find joy every day. I will do what I love, and I will make a difference. And the way we do it in the 3-day challenge is that before your day begins, for 3 days, you determine one thing that you will do that will fulfill your promise. So if it's make a difference, for example, it's I'm going to say hi to all the people, as Louisa does, to the people that I run into in the appropriate way, and I'm gonna be friendly in that regard. For me, a simple one for make a difference is every day I'm going to, and this is what I do every day. But as an example, I might have said, I'm going to wake my girls up laughing. They are going to wake up early in the day laughing, and I talk about that in one part of the book. But so that I know I've made a difference, because if my girls start off the day with a smile and laughing, their positive emotion is generated. Their whole morning has a different tenor, and when they get to school and they run into their friends, different tenor. Right. So choosing just like one thing that you can do for each one of those promises. So as I mentioned before, the find joy could be sitting with your dogs in the morning, or we have a friend, John Sean Doyle, who's a poet, and what he does is for 10 minutes, he does poetry. And so if you can do poetry and for 10 minutes and run with the dogs for 10 minutes and then you wake up the kids in the morning for 5 minutes, that's all we're asking you to do. And then at the end of the day, reflect on it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to write anything. If you're a writer or a journaler, then I definitely write stuff down. It's amazing what you're going to come up with. But really just reflect on it and say, yeah, okay, did I do it? I did. Or if I didn't, okay, I'm not in bed yet, so I can go ahead and do it now. Or you can switch it to something else. You don't have to get caught up on the one thing you thought about in the morning and the night before. But whatever it is, you do that for 3 days. You choose one thing each day. They can be the same, they can be different, and they can be more than one. But the idea is that at the end of the day, you can authentically go, check, I found some joy, check, I did something that I love, check, I made a difference. And then at the end of the 3 days, really what we ask you to do in the book is then to think about how that changed the tenor of your life experience, what that opened up for you, what possibilities now seem possible, what's opening up in your life, and to reflect on that. And Lisa knows, we've done some studies with some groups, and the results have been more than 90% of the people participating in the studies have increased their fulfillment within 3 days. Yeah. Based on what they chose. Now the book is 65 strategies for different ways that you can increase your joy and increase doing what you love and make a difference. But that's only as a resource for you and to hopefully inspire you to choose the things that make a difference for you, that can be a part of your 3 promises every day. Right. And then as Louisa said, yeah, I love hearing people's stories about what opens up as a result of those 3 promises expressed every day.
So can people post on your Facebook page, David, if, once they buy the book and do the 3-day challenge? And you know what, I did find it helpful to write it down, because I think it's more conscious, and plus then I have my things in front of me to remind me too, right? And I think maybe as you get into the habit of things, right, I found that very helpful. But so if we do this, then can we post on your Facebook page, David?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love it.
Okay. David, I want to thank you so much for being here today. It was so wonderful of you to share all these strategies and stories with us. And I know everyone is going to go out and buy the book. It really is transformative. But I just feel so fortunate to have you here and to share this beautiful message with my audience. I know that their lives are already changing. So thank you.
Well, Louisa, thank you. It's been a joy being here. When you think about 3 promises, really quickly, I'll just say it's been fun. So I've had joy. Check. You've given me an opportunity to make a difference. You're creating awareness in the world around the 3 promises, and that's really the key. Is we're trying to make people aware of that they're here. They're a resource. And then, I'm a writer, and I like to reflect on stories and share them. And you gave me that opportunity to do what I love. So
All right.
I'm just going to keep hanging out with
Yeah,
you.
you
I'll have to
got
write
it.
another book so I can come back on the
All right.
show.
You got it. Absolutely.
Thank
Anytime.
you so much.
All right, David. All the best. And all the best with the book. I know it was so exciting. So take care. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. And you have a
Okay.
wonderful day too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.